press the record button now. Okay, so we are now recording. And these are all kind of aims for the session, really. So this is what we're hoping to achieve within the next, say, half an hour. So first of all, what we're going to do is look at the methods that recruiters use to hire graduates. So what kind of things did they do to make their roles attractive to people? How did they select people, etc. Then we're going to look at kind of understanding why employers use the methods that they use. So what do they get out of them, really? And what are they looking for, particularly from you as an applicant? And then thirdly, we're going to look at how to present yourself in the best way during the recruitment process as well. So I'm hoping that is going to give you a really good overview of the recruitment process, what to expect, and what to kind of look out for us in ways that you can kind of really promote yourself and show yourself in the best light. So just before we start, then, it'd be really useful to know, has everybody been applying for jobs? Is anybody not quite at that stage yet? Or have you all kind of been putting yourself out there, applying for roles? Or are you just starting now? And it'd be great if you could just let me know in the chat box or speak to me on the microphone. Either way would be great. So have you been looking for jobs already? Or are you just going to start now? Just started. Okay, brilliant. Excellent. Okay. So wherever you're up to, whether you've just started, whether you've been looking for jobs for a while, there'll be something in here for you. And also don't worry, you know, finding a job is a highly competitive business, really. There are so many people that apply for one job. So if you do find that maybe you're not getting through each of the stages of the recruitment process, then put it, I know it sounds quite flippant, but almost use that as experience, really, because you are out there competing with thousands of other people as well as part of the process, and you will get lucky. It's just about kind of applying for the right job at the right time, in the right way as well. Okay. So this is what the average kind of recruitment process looks like. So this might be familiar with you. You might not have seen this before. And this is a kind of the key stages that an employer will go through, or a recruiter will go through, from finding out they have a job vacancy through to a job offer. So when a vacancy does arise, when someone leaves or a new job's created, what usually happens is the job is analysed, see what tasks, duties, responsibilities are required, so that can then be put together in an advert which is made kind of available to people. So the first thing you find is that an employer will start to kind of attract candidates, and they do that through a variety of different ways. So they will do that through job advertisements. They can do that by coming onto the university campus. They might come and speak to students in a lecture. They might come and do guest lectures for people. They might sponsor events that happen, come along to careers fairs, have a stand there, whether it's a virtual one or an in-person one. They might come along to a recruitment fair on campus. So there's all sorts of ways they're going to try and get the message out there that they're a good graduate kind of employer to work for, and that they have vacancies available. And at this stage, it's the employer's aim to show you, to kind of to cast the net wide, to really get the message out there that they've got jobs available. They really want to kind of make it available to as many people as possible who can see it, so that they can then kind of start to narrow down who might be kind of applicable or suitable for the roles they have available. So the first stage is attraction. And then once they've kind of advertised their, sorry, can I just ask, can everyone see these slides? I'm not sure if my Wi-Fi is working properly. Please let me know if you can't see them. Yeah, okay, brilliant. So then it comes to the application stage, where graduates will see the job advertised and will apply. Now, usually when you're applying for a job these days, you apply with an online application form. So it's really worthwhile coming along to one of the application form sessions if you haven't already, and find out kind of the best way to get your information across on an application form. Other times you're asked to complete a CV and send that off. Although, to be honest, it's more rare to be asked to apply for a job with a CV, particularly at graduate level. It's usually online application forms, Or sometimes now as well, you can use LinkedIn to apply for jobs. So if you've been on LinkedIn recently, you'll see that when you look at the jobs that are available, there's now an easy apply button on there. And you can click on the easy apply button and it will download your kind of profile, your LinkedIn profile, and use that as your job application. So there's a whole kind of range of different ways really that employers are using kind of applications, but online applications remains probably the most popular. And with online application forms, they're quite easy really for an employer to sift through, because a lot of them, particularly the larger employers now, will use software. So artificial intelligence, they'll program the software to look for certain kind of characteristics or criteria, like a certain classification of a degree or certain key skills or certain types of experience. And so what you might find is once you apply for the job, for a particular job, and they've been kind of sifted through, so someone's kind of looked at those application forms, it's usually a computer that will do that first like round of sifting and will kind of eliminate the people who might not have the 2-1 that they're looking for, or might not have the teamwork and skills that they're looking for, whatever it might be. So the chances are, particularly with those large recruiters, that a computer will actually shortlist those first rounds of application rather than a human being. So that's your application. Now, what you might find, and you might have found this already if you're applying for a job, at the same time as applying for the job and filling in the application form, you might also be asked to complete a psychometric test. So sometimes these are at the same time the application form, sometimes they're a bit later. And these we'll look at in a bit more detail in a minute, but these kind of assess things like your numerical reasoning, verbal reasoning, your personality, etc. Another quite common feature of the recruitment process is the either telephone interview or pre-recorded video interview. And again, this is especially kind of common with those larger graduate employers. So if you apply to a graduate scheme, the chances are that you'll have to have some kind of pre-recorded video at some stage. Now, some employers will ask you to do this early on in the process. So you apply for the job, you'll complete your psychometric tests, and then you might be asked to go onto a specific video website and video or record yourself answering interview questions. So maybe 5 interview questions that the employer can then watch in their own time and kind of make notes on and see if you're suitable to go through to the next stage. Others may also have telephone interviews, which again is another kind of very, very early way of sifting out people who aren't suitable for a particular role. So you might apply for the job, do your tests, and then have a telephone interview, probably lasts about half an hour, and it'll be like a normal interview but over the phone, just to check your motivations for applying and to check that you have the right skills, etc. So it's a kind of fairly lengthy process really, even to get to this stage here. And then usually, if you're successful with that, the next stage is an assessment centre. And that is where all of the candidates that the employer or recruiter thinks are suitable and can have the ability to do the roles that are on offer will be invited to get together and go through a series of tasks and activities to test out the skills that are related to the job. So that can be a virtual assessment centre where you would go onto Zoom and meet the other candidates and carry out the tasks online, or it can be you go to a physical place like a hotel or a conference centre and do them there. And then finally, right at the end of all this, the employer will actually start to select people that they think are suitable. So the first stage, that attraction stage, is very much about casting the net wide, getting the message out there, trying to attract as many applications as you can do as an employer. And then from that point onwards, from applications, psychometric tests, etc., this is where they're trying to sift people out of the recruitment process till they really narrow it down to the people that they think can do the job. So does that make sense, everybody? Anyone got any questions about that recruitment process there? Okay, don't worry if you haven't. And if you have got any questions, please pop them in the chat box as we go through this, or if you'd like to speak on the microphone, that's great. Either way, I don't want to, I'm quite conscious that I'm going to be talking at you, so please let me know if there's anything that doesn't make any sense, or you'd just like to check anything as we go through. So that's the overall recruitment process. And what I want to do is just kind of quickly look really at kind of where they advertise their job vacancies, where employers advertise their job vacancies. And you may well be aware of these. And if you came along to the What Next session yesterday, you may be familiar with this slide. But these tend to be the key places, really, that employers will advertise their jobs. And they tend to be also quite, that are free, that are highly visible. So things like job sites, so the typical job sites that they expect graduates to look at. So things like prospects.ac.uk, Target Jobs, Gradcracker, Indeed, Monster, etc. So the typical kind of job sites is well worth as an applicant looking on those, even when the jobs are being applied, and set up some alerts as well, so that you are alerted when suitable jobs come onto the site. Other places they'll advertise jobs are LinkedIn and social media. As I said, they'll come along to careers fairs. If it's a specific job that they're looking for a specific set of skills for, and there might not be that many people out there with them, they may go to a graduate recruitment agency and get the agency to look on their behalf. And then other methods that employers use as well are things like networking. And sometimes if they don't want to have to kind of use lots of time and expense kind of advertising jobs publicly and kind of spending all that time shortlisting hundreds of candidates, what they might do is just network, is use existing contacts. So maybe people who've worked with them before on short-term contracts, or people who've kind of, they know of, they might kind of ask internally, does anybody know who can do this role? And use their contacts that they've got. So it's well worth networking with people that you know. And also sometimes what they might do is actually go over speculative applications. And these are applications that people send in. So it might be, say if you were interested in working for a particular organisation in a particular role, you could contact them directly. So rather than have it wait for them to advertise a job when they've got one available, sometimes if you just get in touch with them ad hoc, just explain who you are, what you can do, how you'd like to work for their organisation. Sometimes what they'll do is keep your details on file. And if they don't have a job available for you then, or kind of they don't have anything coming up in the near future, they may get back in touch with you 6 months down the line, a year down the line, when something's come up that they think might be suitable for you. So it's worthwhile sending in some speculative applications if you're feeling confident about it. And if you just feel like kind of really casting your net wide as a kind of someone looking for a particular role. So hopefully you're kind of using all those methods to find a job, and there's certainly the ways that an employer will kind of advertise their vacancies as well. Now, if you are applying to a graduate scheme, and for people who aren't kind of aware what a graduate scheme is, they are specific kind of training programs for graduates. So they tend to be with larger organizations, and they tend to be maybe between 1 and 3 years long, and they consist of a period of working in different kind of departments. So you kind of almost work on rotations around the business so that you gain experience and skills. And usually at the same time as well, you're giving some kind of training and development. So you might be put forward for some kind of professional qualification, etc. So they're a great way of starting your career. They're a great way, particularly if you want to work for a large organisation, of becoming familiar with how they work. They can, however, be very competitive to get a position on, but that shouldn't mean that you don't go for it. But they're well worth applying for if you get the chance to. And this is kind of a typical recruitment process for a graduate scheme. And this is actually to work at Dublin Airport. And it's just one that I found. It's for Dublin Airport's graduates kind of recruitment programme. But it really sums up the kind of the stages that they go through and when they happen. So for graduate schemes, the majority of schemes open for applications in the autumn term or semester. So somewhere between, sometimes it's as early as July, sometimes it's as late as December, but certainly around that time of year is when they start advertising their graduate programs. Then the closing date is usually around, say, Christmas time. Here it says November, but somewhere around Christmas time. And then what you'll find is usually in the new year, or again, just before Christmas, then you'll start to go through the online assessments. Then if you're successful at that stage, you might be invited to an assessment centre, which will happen then in the new year. And then finally, interviews will happen, say, in March, and then the actual graduate programme will start in September. So this whole process can take months. And as you can see, it can take for a graduate scheme, that whole recruitment process can take from September to September. So an entire year of your life. So if you're graduating this year and you've missed this year's kind of round of applications, you can apply for next year. That's fine. So look out in towards the end of July for when applications are being open for the graduate schemes, and then just start to apply through the process then. So that's fine. You can still apply for these. With other kind of graduate jobs that aren't part of graduate schemes, the more kind of one-off roles, then they can really appear as and when. But as the majority of employers know that most graduates will be finishing their degree around, say, May, June, graduating in July, you'll see probably openings for a lot of them around this time of year as well. Okay, but they can be any time throughout the year, really. Okay, let's move on. So I'm not going to focus too much on online applications and interviews and things like that, because I think they're covered in other sessions that we've done. So what I want to do is just pick out really psychometric tests and assessment centres, because you may not be as familiar with those. And in fact, can I ask you all, has anyone had a go at a psychometric test, or have you been along to an assessment centre? It'd be really useful to know if this is something you have experience of. And again, you could let me know in the chat box, or you can let me know on the microphone, either way. Okay, so maybe you have. There's all sorts of different psychometric tests, so they don't always take the same kind of form. With an assessment centre, there are really kind of well-organised events, so you might be familiar with that. Let's have a quick look then at these psychometric tests. So they tend to, what they're there to do is to identify your skills, your knowledge and your personality. So as it says there in the slide, they're also objective. So everybody who does them has exactly the same opportunity or asks the same questions in the same way. So you're kind of assessed against each other in the same way. They're convenient because they're online, so they're cheap to run. They can be given to thousands of candidates all at the same time. And also they can be rated to the job. And your performance in a test can give the employer a good idea of how well you're going to be able to perform in that particular job on offer. So the two key types of psychometric tests are personality tests and aptitude tests. So you may have heard these kind of terms bandied around a lot. So personality tests are there to kind of really look at your interests, values, motivations, etc., to find out a little bit more about you, what makes you tick, and to see if your character and personality will fit into the role that's on offer and fit in with the values of the organisation as well. So as well as doing that, what employees can do through these tests is also analyse your emotions and your behaviours, and see how you would cope in different situations as well. So how you would kind of react in maybe different kind of pressurised situations. And the way they might do that is by giving you a situational judgment test, where you have to say how you'd behave if a certain situation occurred, like you were dealing with a difficult customer or someone who was complaining or something like that. So that's a personality test. And then we've got the aptitude test. And this is where employers test your actual kind of cognitive ability. So your ability to solve problems, to solve numerical problems, diagrammatical problems, etc., work out graphs, etc. So all sorts of technical kind of quite hard skills, if you like. And whichever test the employer runs will depend upon the role that's on offer. So if, for example, it's a role which is going to involve a lot of numerical reasoning, then that's what's going to be tested. If it's one that's going to be with you having to communicate a lot with customers, then you probably find that verbal reasoning will be used. And the way these tests are used is that the employers will have an average percentage, if you like, pass rate that the graduates who work in their organisation must have. So you must kind of achieve over a certain level in each of these tests to get through to the next stage. So that's why these are used. Now, the other type of assessment which is becoming more and more popular is something called games-based assessments or gamified assessments. And these are a bit different, really. This is where you're given more a challenge, which is a bit like an online game. So, for example, there's one that is delivered by PwC, which is PricewaterhouseCoopers. And what you have to do with that is basically pump up a virtual balloon till you think it is as full as it can be without exploding. And this particular exercise is there to test how much of a risk taker you are, to see how far you will pump that balloon up. And that is for a role within investment banking. So it's kind of, you can see how that will link. So your ability to take risks, and that might translate in how well and how much risk you take with other people's money, I suppose. But it's a type of exercise there which you really can't prepare much for. That's the kind of the difference really between the aptitude tests and the personality and the game-based assessments, is you can't really kind of prepare for the games one or the personality ones because you're not quite sure what you're going to be asked. Whereas with aptitude tests, by just kind of going over basic maths and English, you'll put yourself in a really good position. Has anybody had a go at the game-based assessments? Anyone seen those anywhere where you kind of have to pump up a balloon or drive a virtual car or whatever it might be? Okay, don't worry if you haven't. What I've got is a list of sample or practice psychometric test websites which I'll send out to you, and they're really interesting just to have a go at. And there's ones as well for those kind of games-based assessments that you could try. So I suppose with these psychometric tests, the kind of key advice is to practice. And this will help you become more familiar with what's going to be out there, the type of things that you could be asked to do. The other thing to mention as well is to make sure that you read the instructions and really be clear that you understand what you've been asked to do, because it's so easy to make simple mistakes. So for example, with numerical questions, check that they're asking for the answer to be in maybe kilograms or grams or whatever it might be. Really look at the detail of the question, and also be aware of time. Now, typically the way that tests are structured, particularly those numerical and verbal reasoning tests, etc., is there's a lot to do in the time that you're given, and that is to put you under pressure, and that is to test both your kind of speed and your accuracy. So sometimes there might be too many questions for you to answer, so just need to kind of bear that in mind. And I suppose the key message is, if you get stuck, if there's a question that you're really struggling to do, just move on, because you're under time pressure. So come back to it later if you can do. You might not have time to, but it's best to get as many right as you possibly can do. So any questions about psychometric tests? No? Should we have a go at one? I've got a sample question here. I thought, let's just see if you can answer this. No, it might take a few minutes to have a go at. But this is an example of an inductive reasoning test. And this is just to explore people's kind of powers of reasoning to see if they can work out a problem. And what you have to do in this type of test here is you have a series of images like that top row up there, like the shields that appear on the top row. And what you have to do is work out what comes next in the pattern. So in this question here, we need to work out what comes in the third box there. And this row underneath here, A, B, C, D, E, are all the possible answers. So it'd be great if you can maybe spend a few minutes just thinking about which one you would think is the right answer. And when you think you've got it, just let me know by putting the letter in the chat box, and we'll see if you got it right. Just see if you can work out which is the right shield for that box with the question mark in. Let's see if you can work it out. Okay, lovely. Oh, okay. Brilliant, we've got a couple of answers coming in. Anyone else going to have a go? Well, let's have a look then at the answer. Thank you, everybody. You are, in fact, all right. Yep, you all said E, which is the right answer. Brilliant. Well done. Give yourselves a pat on the back. That's excellent. And as you kind of will probably have worked out there, you have to kind of take each element of the shield, so each of those 4 kind of quadrants, if you like, and work out where that will be. And as you can see here, under the kind of the rule 1, rule 2, rule 3, these are the different kind of movements that each of those different sections are making. So you can see the segment of the shield move 1 place counterclockwise each time, so anti-clockwise. The total number of circles increases by 1 each time, and the lines in the line segment rotate 45 degrees counterclockwise each time as well. So brilliant, well done, you've all passed that. And what I'll do is I'll send you the details of where I got this from, so you can have a go at the other ones if you like. But that's just one example of a psychometric test. Okay, now let's have a look at assessment centres. So these will be part of the process for a graduate scheme if you're applying for one. They may also be part of applying for a regular kind of graduate job as well. And even if they're not, the chances are when you go for an interview for any role, whether it's a graduate role or not now, usually you will have to do some kind of work-related activity. So sometimes you're asked to give a presentation, sometimes you'll have some kind of simulated inbox that you have to go through, or sometimes it's an Excel spreadsheet that you'll have to have a look at. But usually now there's some additional kind of task you will have to do in addition to your interview to check that you've got the skills for the job. So let's have a look then. So an assessment centre is where the organisation assesses a group of candidates at the same time and place using a range of selection exercises. So everyone who is successful at that point gets invited to come along together and complete tasks and activities together. And these tasks and activities relate to the job. So the skill will be assessing the skills that you need for the job. And now over the pandemic and still now, virtual assessment centres have been incredibly popular because obviously we've had social distancing, so you couldn't get together. So employers moved the recruitment process online and did these assessment centres via Zoom. So you might, for example, be put in kind of a main room like this while you're told the instructions of an exercise, and then you might be put into breakout rooms with other people to work on group exercises. So that type of thing. And now prior to the pandemic, and some employers have kind of reverted back to this, they like to run live assessments. And this is where you'd be invited to a hotel somewhere or company headquarters or conference centre, and you would physically meet people and physically kind of do the exercises together. And I suppose the benefit of that is that you get to meet people in person and that you can ask them questions that you probably wouldn't ask in a Zoom session. So you could just have kind of over the coffee breaks and things, you get to chat to people who work there, to other graduates who work there on the graduate schemes, see what they think of the place, etc. So there's pros and cons of both. I suppose with the virtual assessment centre, there's less time, you don't have to travel to them, etc. But you get probably a little bit more inside information if you do go along to the ones in person. Okay, now these are examples of the type of exercise that you might have to do when you go along. So if it was, for example, for a customer facing role, you might have to do some kind of role play where you have to deal with someone who, for example, is angry about a product they've bought or about some kind of customer service that they've received that wasn't up to scratch. You might be given a business case study that you have to read through and then prepare some kind of recommendations of how you deal with a particular problem and present that back. You might have to work in group exercises to physically build things or to discuss things, etc. You might have another interview. You might have an e-tray task where you are given a simulated email inbox and you have to decide how to respond to each of the different kind of messages in that inbox, whether to kind of forward them on to someone else, whether to reply to them, whether to kind of action them somehow, whether to delete them, etc. You might have more psychometric tests. Sometimes employers like to include more psychometric tests because when you apply for the job, I suppose because you're doing them at home, sometimes other people can do them for you. So this can be a way of ruling out someone else kind of cheating the system. And you might have to give presentations as well. So there's a whole range of different things there to get involved in when you go along for an assessment centre. And what you usually find is you work on the task and you'll have assessors sitting around the outside of the room watching what you're doing. Okay. Now the reasons why employers use assessment centres for a variety of reasons. So first of all, because interviews in any kind of job interview situation are limited. And all interviews really show is how good somebody is at interviewing. They never show really how good someone is at doing a job. So that's why they employers will ask you to do work-related kind of tasks, or tasks which are there to test specific skills that you need to do a job. So really the evidence, they can see the evidence themselves, because anyone can say that they can do something, but they will able to test you there and then and see if you can do what you say you can do. At the same time as well, they'll get a feel for you, what you're like, what your personality is like, if you're going to be a good fit for them, for their role, for their organisation. And also because assessment centres and psychometric tests are fair. Generally speaking, they're fair because everybody has the same opportunity to do well. Now, if you have some reason why you feel like you might not perform as well in tests and as well as other people in the assessment centre, then definitely speak to the organisers, definitely speak to the employers, and they will make reasonable adjustments. So that's perfectly expected to do that. If you feel that you might need longer time to read through information and things like that, definitely get in touch so that you have the same opportunity as everybody else. Okay, so the best way then to prepare yourself for this kind of whole process through the applications, through the psychometric tests, through the assessment centre itself, is to be familiar with the job. Really make sure you know the job description, the person specification inside out. And that will come across when you talk at interview. And so, for example, if the employer asks you what you're most looking forward to in the job, or what really stood out for you about the job on offer, you can be specific. You can really mention things that were in that job description. Make sure you know what you're capable of. Make sure that you're comfortable in talking about your skills and your experience, and always back things up with evidence. So it's never good enough to say, well, I'm a really good communicator. Make sure you can explain how you know that. What have you done that can show that you're a really good communicator? And also make sure you research into the organisation, so know about their products, their services, their competitors, about the scheme or the job itself. Make sure you've got a reason why you want to work for them, and make them feel special. That's what an employer wants. So you've got a genuine interest in working for them. And then when it comes to those those psychometric tests, don't forget to brush up on your technical knowledge, go over some kind of GCSE past papers, and look at some online resources as well. And I will send you some of those. Okay. Also, you may be familiar with Career Zone 24/7, which is on our careers website. And there's a section on there about assessment centres. And that will take you through different kinds of tests that you may come across in assessment centre. So it's well worth visiting that. Other things we can help you, let's just scoot through this for a minute, is other things we can help you with as part of this recruitment process are online. We've got the, again, a interview software really called Interview 360. And that is a video kind of interviewing software, which is just for practice really, where you can record yourself answering interview questions, and you can watch it back and you can get feedback from the software itself. We also can organise mock interviews for you for any job. So if you have a job interview coming up and you'd like a bit of help, come and have a mock interview. It just helps. It will make you feel better and more confident. We can organise those anytime. We've got those practice tests I can send out to you, and also from time to time we organise virtual assessment centres. And even once you've graduated, if you want to have a go at these things, you can definitely sign up and come for those. So that kind of brings me to the end of this session. I just wanted to point out to everybody that if you haven't come along to an application workshop or a CV workshop, we've got one today at 5:30 if you fancy signing up for that. If you've been to one already, that's fine. It's just because it's part of the recruitment process. And also tomorrow we've got a session on interviews, which might be useful as well to kind of complete the recruitment process. Also sessions on kind of how to look for jobs, how to use LinkedIn as well. There's a really interesting session on Friday morning for people who are graduating this year, who may be concerned about the transition from university to kind of life after university. and that's run by the Wellbeing Department, so you might want to come along to that. That's at 10 o'clock. It's called Surviving and Thriving After University. So there's still some more sessions to come along to, and it would be great to see you there. So everyone, I hope that you found that useful. Has anybody got any questions, anything you're still maybe not sure of, or you'd just like to check, or, and it could be about anything, it doesn't, anything careers related, it doesn't have to be necessarily about this session. Okay, thank you very much. It's been lovely talking to you. As I said, I'll send out the recording and I'll send out the slides and also some links to some practice test sites as well. And don't forget, as a graduate, you have lifelong access to our services, so you can come back, you know, next year. If you still need help, please come and see us. You're more than welcome. So thank you very much, everybody. Go and enjoy your afternoon, and hopefully I will see you at another session soon.